Okay, folks, welcome to your second lesson of news for this week. In your last video, I asked you to have a look at the connotations of this particular broadsheet newspaper or quality tabloid newspaper, The Guardian, and complete your annotations on it. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. There's a few things that I hope you will have picked up yourself, but perhaps we can go through it a little bit together. So to start off with, it's an interesting format for this paper because usually you'd have your masthead at the top, but in this case the masthead has been pushed down to halfway. The masthead of The Guardian is its brand, the blue background and the serif font suggesting traditional and newsworthy content. And also its information up here at the top, the date and the price are always there. What's usually here in the skyline is some puffs and some other stories. However, the big story here is about Maradona. And I think this really does represent the sort of the audience of The Guardian. While they are ABC One, they are worldly, they are culturally aware, and therefore nearly half of the page above the line, above the fold page, is taken up by this close-up shot of Maradona. Now, just a bit of terminology for you here. If you fold this paper in half, above this fold would be called above the fold, and below the fold is here. So that's what we'll be referring to from here on in. A little insight into the photograph that The Guardian have chosen. It's a close-up of Maradona looking up. I lost a great friend and the world has lost a legend, says Pele yesterday. So it's a direct quote from arguably the best footballer that's ever lived. Maradona looking up, the connotations there are perhaps he's looking heavenward, up to the sky, or it could perhaps have connotations with the hand of God, which we talked about last lesson. It's very simple, 1960s into 2020. There's an obituary there. So there's some information on him from pages 2 and 3, and then the sport is later on in the newspaper, as you'd expect. That's the information we get. Those people or individuals who are more familiar with this type of journalism will know that dates like this suggest of the passing of an individual. So again, it's keying into the codes and conventions that would be expected of a Guardian reader. We don't need to know necessarily he's a footballer. We don't need to know he's Argentinian, because we expect that the readership of this paper knows a lot about this individual. So it's pretty simple. It's straightforward, and actually it's not cluttered at all. When we go below the fold, that's when we get the information or the economic information that was featured in not a huge amount of prominence in the previous analysis that we did for the Daily Mirror, which is up here. So this is a much more thorough analysis, biggest UK slump in over 30 years. Notice the difference between the Mirror and the Guardian. They've put a sort of a witty pun in for the same story here, with Rishi Sunak being featured. However, in the Guardian, it's just facts. It's unbiased, unopinionated, evidential, fact-driven journalism. The byline there is in red. There's a couple of stand firsts here, and there's a lot of copy. The copy is only matched in terms of its size by this quite detailed graph, which you'd have to look quite carefully at in order to try and get some impression of what exactly is going on. But essentially it's a timeline about economic growth within the UK. And again, the Guardian can afford to have this sort of level of detail within their front page, because they're expecting their readers to digest this information, to take it slowly in order to understand it in full and in detail. So other bits of media language to be aware of here: the key colours, the blue, the light blue, and the blue of the Guardian, which is their trademark signage and their trademark fonts. The layout is actually pretty unique for the Guardian. As mentioned before, we'd usually have a lot more copy, a lot less graphic, but I think that's important to mention in and of itself because of the significance of the passing of Diego Maradona. The fact that they felt it was necessary to take up almost half of their front cover respecting the passing of this individual footballer. So I hope you're starting to get the hang of this now. So from top to bottom, you need to be thinking about the layout, the fonts, the photographs, where the photographs are placed, what the photographs might suggest, the masthead, the layout of the masthead, and the fonts used in the mastheads, and then the language that's used within the headlines as well. So Rishi's pledged to deliver on your priorities. This is the Daily Express. It's a mid-market tabloid. It's very similar to the Daily Mail. And I'd like you again to just take a few minutes now and try to understand how the same story on the same day is being represented in these three different newspapers. So again, you can focus on the headline. You can focus on this picture on the right-hand side of Meghan, which is very typical of mid-market tabloids, putting a woman in the right-hand side. Once you're happy with your analysis, I'd like you to create a table like this, please. So it's the genre conventions of a tabloid, the genre conventions of a quality tabloid, and the genre conventions of a mid-market tabloid. So quality tabloid, remember, is a broadsheet. Mid-market tabloid, a quality tabloid is a broadsheet, for example, The Guardian. The mid-market tabloid, for example, the Daily Express, which you've just looked at, or the Daily Mail. And then finally the red top tabloids, which is the Mirror and the Sun. So go ahead, once you've done your analysis of the Daily Express, please go ahead and fill out this table. All of your work that you're going to be doing should be on your blog, so they're easy for us to check and to make sure that you're on the right level and on the right, that you're doing the right things. So if you can go ahead, and I do appreciate that this isn't going to be full, but we are going to be looking at other papers going forward for which you're going to be able to add to this table. So don't worry if you aren't writing huge paragraphs here, but I do want you to give me the detail from the three examples that we've looked at: the Mirror, the Guardian, and the Express, and populate that table now. Do that for about 15 minutes if you can, and then come back. Once you have completed this table, I would like you to go ahead, get yourself onto YouTube. I'd like you to search this video here, please: Stuart Hall Representation Theory Explained. On this video, you're going to hear from the Media Insider and some of his really good analysis. So go ahead and search this: Stuart Hall Reception Theory Explained, and you're going to watch the whole of that video, and it's going to hopefully recap Stuart Hall's theory, and specifically those three key terms: dominant, negotiated, and rejected, which are the three potential ways you can look at any media product. So go ahead, look at that video. It's a 6-minute video. Take some notes, put them in your blog, and then come back to me. Okay, what I need you to do now is keep on YouTube, and I'd like you to Google Stuart Hall's representation theory. So you've just looked at reception theory, so how individuals receive messages being created by the mass media. Now I'd like you to look at the representation theory, and again, it's described by the same guy in quite a lot of detail. It's a good video, but what's important for you to recognize is that Stuart Hall within our course has two different theories, both of which you need to be aware of, and so this video talks about the second of those two theories. So go ahead and take some notes on Stuart Hall's representation theory as well as his reception theory. If you could do that now, put it in your blog, then come back to me. So why are we doing this? Let's just remind ourselves why we're doing this, because you're going to get two sources from two different papers, whether that be a website or the front page of the print newspaper. And you're going to be asked to compare either the representation or the media language, and it's going to be the same story. So we need to start practicing, and that's what you've been doing with your for the past two lessons. You started to collect the codes and conventions of these four different subgenres of newspapers. So this is going to be quite useful for you, or that table that you've started to collect. That's going to be useful for you within this next task. The task is, I'd like you to plan how you would answer this question. So this is the 15-mark question. It's going to take about 20 minutes to write. And you don't worry, you're not going to write it. We're just going to plan it. And what I'd like you to do is just do what you've done with the Express and the Guardian previously, and annotate and understand how the media language is being used within these two sources. So the question here is quite specific. Sources A and B are front covers of two different genres of newspaper covering the same story. How far has genre influenced the media language used in A and B? In your answer, you must outline genre conventions in British newspapers. Okay, so you're going to be able to do that because you've started this table here. So you're going to be able to say what the genre convention is of a broadsheet. In this case, it is a broadsheet because it's the Daily Telegraph, but you might refer to it as a quality tabloid. And a red top tabloid here. In this case, it's the Daily Mirror. So you're going to outline the genre conventions of these two subgenres of paper. That's the first thing you're going to do. Second thing you're going to do, analyze the contrasting use of media language in the sources. Okay, so this is when you're going to take these two sources and you're going to talk about the media language used. You might talk about the curvic, traditional, almost calligraphic masthead of the Daily Telegraph, suggesting imperious, traditional news with the serifs and the fonts everywhere, and the frills on the T and the D, and then again the T. Just remember as well what the Telegraph is in terms of a paper. It's a right-leaning, conservative supporting paper, and therefore it's not a surprise that we have this sort of rambunctious, quite aggressive headline here. Cameron lashes out at Gove and Johnson. So this is the former Prime Minister, David Cameron, and he did a long interview talking about what his last days in office regarding Brexit and what happened to make him leave. So there's three subheadings here: on the leavers, on the PM, and on Brexit. You obviously can talk about the amount of copy to image, even though this is quite a heavy this is a big image here, certainly for the Telegraph, but I think similar to The Guardian, there's big image that you use for Maradona. It suggests the importance of this story, the fact that most of the above the fold is taken by this picture of David Cameron. You might go ahead and you might say that the bylines are accompanied by the portraits of the journalists, suggesting that the quality of the journalism is super important, and that individuals who are used to buying the Telegraph may be persuaded to buy it because they've seen the journalist that they are familiar with. And you can also comment here on the adverts and the differences between the adverts here. We've got a advert for a luxury Caribbean resort here and sandals versus Tesco's for Daily Mirror, and that does represent the difference in the demographics, ABC1 versus CDE2 for the Daily Mirror. Now go ahead, talk about the Daily Mirror. It's left-leaning, so it's more Labour supporting. So we're expecting this, although this is an interesting take by the Telegraph saying Cameron lashes out at Gove and Johnson, they're all part of the same party, and suggests that there is a bit of sort of internal division here. This is what the Mirror leads with. Cameron, my drug taking with wife. So from this interview that David Cameron gave, the Mirror has decided to focus on this particular aspect. There's nothing about that on the front page of the Telegraph, but it's interesting the Mirror have decided to focus on it here. We've got the Stand First here. Tory's confession as he reveals Boris Johnson never wanted to leave the EU. And you can notice that that is actually a subheading. It's not as important as the main point here, which is the drug taking with Samantha Cameron. So that's the second thing you need to do. You're talking about the different contrasting use of media language between the two sources. The last thing you need to do is think about, is it just the fact that these two papers are different genres that make their stories so different? Or perhaps is it more to do with their political leaning and their audience? That's the last thing you need to do. Remember, this is a plan. It's all going to go on your blog. Please go ahead and do that. Best of luck with it.